Many people consider World War II to be the first time that considerable numbers of American women had jobs outside the house. Matter of fact, in 1940, around 1/4 of women had paid employment outside the house. Before World War II, the majority of women's paid work was limited to traditionally feminine quote-unquote occupations, such as typing or sewing, and the majority of women were expected to quit the labor sector as soon as they had children, if not as soon as they married. World War II transformed both the sort of labor women undertook and the volume at which they did it. Between the years of 1940 and 1945, 5 million more women joined the labor force. The gap in the labor force created by departing soldiers meant opportunities for women. In particular, World War II spurred a large number of women throughout the nation to seek employment in military facilities and factories. These employments offered previously unheard of chances for women to get into industries that were traditionally thought of as being exclusive to males, particularly in the aviation sector, where women made up the majority of employees by 1943. Yet, throughout World War II, the vast majority of women who participated in the workforce did not do so in the military sector. Most of these women moved into formerly male-dominated workplaces like factories or offices. Even though women often made more money than ever before, they still made much less than men did for doing the same jobs. Still, many reached a level of financial independence that was desirable, but it wasn't without difficulties. During World War II, working women, particularly mothers, faced the biggest challenge. To help women juggle work and family responsibilities, Eleanor Roosevelt, an American political figure, diplomat, and activist, also known as the First Lady of the United States, pushed for the establishment of the first federally funded daycare centers in the United States under the Community Facilities Act of 1942. In the end, 7 facilities were constructed with a total capacity of 105,000 children. The First Lady also encouraged business owners to provide top-notch childcare centers for their employees. Yet, these initiatives fell short of fully satisfying working moms' need for childcare. There was also significant hostility on a cultural level to the idea of women working in settings that were mostly male. To reassure men that the demands of war would not make women too masculine, some factories gave female employees lessons in how to apply makeup, and cosmetics were never rationed during the war. People thought it was important for morale to make sure American women looked their best. During the time of World War II, women from minority groups had a particularly tough situation. African American women in the military sector had a difficult time finding employment, and when they did, they reported that white women were often hesitant to work with them. While many black women were able to leave their low-paying domestic service jobs and into higher-paying manufacturing jobs during the war, they were mostly let go after the war had ended and returned to their former professions of maid and cook. Japanese American women in Western states had little access to new career prospects, given that the policy of Japanese internment had resettled them in isolated places. Women of Japanese ancestry in the United States tried to maintain a sense of normality in the face of appalling deprivation while crammed into barns that had been turned into housing and lived with as many as 8 people in a single room. During World War II, around 350,000 women in the United States served in the armed forces. Their occupations ranged from nursing to truck driving to aircraft maintenance to secretarial duties. Some were killed in battle, while others were taken as prisoners of war. More than 1,600 female nurses were honored for their bravery throughout the war. World War II changed the lives of women and men in many ways on the home front. The demands for men and women to work during wartime rose, as did the difficulties and stresses of the home and the expectations to fit in with societal and cultural standards. All of these shifts caused people in the United States to reevaluate their preconceived notions on gender, including how women and men should act and appear, what attributes they should possess, and what roles they should play in their families and communities. Most women worked in the office and service industries where they had been doing so for decades. However, the wartime economy gave women jobs in heavy industry and wartime production plants, which had previously been the domain of men. Some male employees reacted aggressively against their female co-workers because they saw women doing physically demanding and skilled duties as an imposition on their work. Some employers tried to maintain the pre-war gender quo in the workplace by segregating male and female employees and paying women less. Furthermore, the independence of women in the workforce and their willingness to spend time outside the home without the protection of a male guardian was a matter of problem for many Americans. Especially for white, middle-class families, these working women were a threat to the idea that men should work and women should stay at home and care for their families. The federal government and industry leaders tried to reassure a skeptical public by portraying women workers as the epitome of femininity and by characterizing women's employment as patriotic and essential. After the war was over, many women were more than eager to return to a life of domesticity, yet even those women who wanted or needed to continue working discovered that their choices were severely restricted as men returned to their homes and the need for war materials dwindled. Without the war to legitimize the unorthodox labor of women, many businesses moved women out of the higher-paid positions they had occupied during the war, out of the workforce completely, or into lower-earning and less secure pink-collar employment. Wartime labor was transformational for many women who had accepted its difficulties and relished its rewards. But personnel policies after the conclusion of the war put men and women back into jobs that matched pre-war gender understandings. This led men and women to return to their traditional roles. Women's life changed in various ways during World War II. As is the case with most conflicts, many women felt that their options and skills grew during this time. As Doris Weatherford said, war bears many ironies, and among them is its liberating impact on women. However, the battle also brings to the degrading of women in particular, since they're often the targets of sexual violence. Women who worked outside the house also had their own set of challenges. Those who were parents had a tough time between work and the demands of raising a family on their own. Many people had to learn how to handle their money for the first time and adapt to a limited budget that was made much tighter by war rations and the need to purchase war bonds. Working women weren't always given equal opportunities in the past. They earned less money, and some men looked down on them and believed they weren't suited to doing a man's job, quote-unquote. They had to deal with sexual harassment, long hours, and sometimes unsafe environments. Men's views of women changed slowly throughout time, but only because they began to see more and more women in professional roles and because of the rise in the need for employees. The appeal to working women was designed to be transitory, and women were expected to quit their occupations when the war ended. Some women were comfortable with this, but they left their roles with new talents and increased confidence. Those women who stayed on the job were often demoted. After everything the women did for the war effort without thinking about themselves, it was impossible for males to continue to assert dominance. A lot of women had a taste of economic and personal independence and had flourished as a reward, but they wanted more. Even if progress was gradual over the following 2 decades, women who served their nation in the military or at home gave them the confidence to fight for equal rights in the workplace and beyond, including the opportunity to work in non-traditional occupations for equal pay and equal rights in the workplace.